Good morning, comrades. You are listening to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. This is your weekly Good Morning Comrade. Jeff here on the show, and this week we have returning from last week after anything happened last week? Was it busy last week or anything like that?
It seems like we're drinking right. We're drinking water from a fire hose, right? That's what it feels like.
Exactly. Markalain Dery.
Hello. How's it going, buddy? Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Anytime. So Super Bowl was last week. I saw that was a real banger for the economy.
I have no idea. What do we have any numbers or?
Well, the numbers that I saw posted, I wish I had them pulled up. That's not going to be the core of our conversation today, but they looked like it was not very good. There was a lot of very contained, very Super Bowl specific type stuff going on, and the businesses that were supposed to benefit from this huge thing didn't do that. That's at least the sense that I get from what I've seen coming out of there. It's just like one of these sorts of things where these huge events that, you have all these cities contesting for doesn't really have the impact on the economy, and definitely not for workers.
So you're saying that somehow the rich are able to convince everybody else to do things for them, and they end up getting away with it? And
crazy, right?
It's like Lucy and the football all over again, over and over again.
It never seems to work out.
Despite the studies that are out there that warn people, but somehow cities. Did you see Scalise? Scalise now recommend. He went to Steve Goodell, who I think is either the executive director. I don't know what fancy name he has for.
He's the CEO. Roger Goodell's the commissioner of the National Football League.
Whatever that means. He's like the CEO.
I'm the authority figure.
Right. So Scalise went to Goodell and offered this idea. It was to have Super Bowl in 1 year would be in New Orleans, the next year in Las Vegas, the next year in another city, and then start that cycle all over again.
I've seen that one before too, but
this year it's North. So you're a great person to talk to about this. When I saw this today, when I read it, to me it smacked of one very, very obvious thing, which was they like New Orleans under Super Bowl conditions.
Oh yeah,
right. They like it when it's corporate.
When the National Guard is in the French Quarter.
Low-flying helicopters, drones, all that stuff. And if you have it every 3 years, then you start slowly setting up the city.
It becomes normal.
And then this is how we turn into the Disneyfication of New Orleans, or the dreaded, but I think we're already headed in that direction anyway, police state that we live in.
Oh, yeah. But regardless of that, that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about
some big news today, huh?
Well, yeah. So recording on Thursday, and your favorite Kennedy and mine just happened to lock up a position as the Health and Human Services Director, Secretary. Bobby Kennedy.
Yep. So Bobby Kennedy, the health commissioner, it is really, I mean, I know that whoever you are can
you just describe who he is, I guess? Really?
Yeah. Right. I will. I was just like, I was just about to say, we all have our Bobby Kennedys now in the government. If you're a cop, it's Kash Patel. If you're in security, it's Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, if you're an attorney, it's who's the Pamela Bondi or Pamela Bond or whatever. So essentially there's a RFK in every part of the government.
Yeah.
And basically,
Like the
as we
chicken in
know,
every pot, but like
but
an
in a
RFK
much
in every
darker,
department.
right? It's the yin of the chicken in every pot yang, So essentially, obviously, as we know, this is the son of Bobby Kennedy. His father was obviously killed at a very young age, and from all accounts, I'm not an expert on the man. I've only read and kind of followed him initially peripherally. He was at one time a progressive broadcaster, a broadcaster,
He used to do a
and
show with Sam,
he used
right?
to do shows with Sam Cedar, right? And they were on the same show, which is
Ring of
not
Fire
Firewalk
Radio.
with Me, Ring of Fire. I said Firewalk with Me. I still have David Lynch on the brain. So this is a man who grew up drug and alcohol dependent. By all in
He's a
his
Kennedy,
cousin, right? His cousin talked about him, doing very disturbing things in his college dorm room, such as like grinding up live rodents
Gross.
for food for his snakes, and would bring the cousins in. And then we know that there have been stories about him cutting the head of a whale off. Are you familiar? Have you heard about this one? Cutting the head of a whale.
That sort of reminds me of that episode of Seinfeld where, like, is anybody around here a marine biologist where he's supposed to go and save the whale? Except this guy is like, comes and cuts its head off.
They cut the head, and there is an account that I will never be able to find it, but I think there was one of his kids may have mentioned or talked about what that drive was like, with just the it was bloody and had whale fluids, and it was put on top of the vehicle.
Yeah,
and
imagine it wasn't very pleasant.
Yeah, and who does that? Furthermore, and
Kennedy do that.
He took a bear he found a dead bear in the northern part of New York State, and then drove it down to the city, to Central Park, and kind of propped it as if it were like a joke of some sort or another.
Weird thing.
So I present you three stories that, and I'm sure there's more.
Oh, no question.
I know there's more, but three things that have stood out to me that are, doctors don't do that, right? Like people who care about health, people who care about others, people who care.
Like most normal people, even if you don't care about anybody and stuff, don't do that.
Normal people, right? You don't cut the head of a whale and take it home.
He's a freak by Kennedy standards.
He's a freak. He is a grand disappointment by Kennedy standards. Yes, indeed. And when they look him in the eye and they're like, "You're a disappointment." That by Kennedy standards, that's yes.
Incredible.
So the other thing about him that's incredibly notable, and the story that I'm sure the majority of the listeners here have heard, was the measles in Samoa, and how he was likely, if not allegedly likely, to be responsible for the deaths of I think 60, 70, 80 children. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but essentially, I've seen measles before. It is an incredibly infectious virus. Measles is caused by a virus, and it transmits very rapidly. In some cases, it causes death. And in this case, there was a large, and you can treat measles, an outbreak of measles, by vaccinating people. Yeah. So there was a lack of vaccinations in Samoa. It was made worse by the presence of Kennedy, who came and actually kind of was advocating or campaigning against the use of vaccines, because he has the Kennedy name. Dude, I think about this all the time. Imagine if you had Elon Musk money. Or imagine if you had a Kennedy name. How is it that these people who could be who are so influential and who could do so much good in the world are like literally squandering it?
Yeah.
Like you have the Kennedy name. You went somewhere and you actually took something and made it worse.
Yeah.
That's
very like One Ring. Like he's got the One Ring. He's gonna do all the evil. He's Soren now.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so this is the guy who's now head of Health and Human Services. So I think the best questions to ask are this: what's going to happen next? I think so. perfect segue into the second very significant thing that happened today, at least in the state of Louisiana. We knew, and I think did I alert you to this, the story in
Are you
December, or
talking about the
the
Louisiana
NPR? Yeah,
essentially turning off vaccinations, like
right.
ending
So
vaccinations and
in
refusing to the ended the vaccine requirement and doesn't allow public workers to even talk about it.
Right. Well, so let me clarify. So in December, at the end of December, kind of like deep in the end of December, maybe after Christmas, right before New Year's.
Yeah, when everybody's in a liminal
it-
space where like
right.
nobody's paying attention to anything because like it's like 5 days left to the year and you got nothing left going on and it's just like whatever.
So a lot of people may have missed the story, but it came out in NPR. And so because you know what, if it wasn't NPR, Jeff, the people I sent that story to, people did not believe it. Like people, like when I sent it to some of the broadcasters and podcasters I know around the country, like when I told them, they were like, "No." And
Get
then
out
when I
of
showed
here.
them it was an NPR story, they were like, "Whoa."
Yeah.
So what happened in that December story was today was the final fulfillment of that. And that was in December, NPR reported that some state health workers had leaked to them or had told them, or I don't, whatever the word is, had leaked to them that they're starting to receive letters saying that mass vaccination programs were going to come to a standstill. In other words, they could not promote vaccines and they could not promote mass vaccination. So it's an example of mass vaccinations. As we know, Mpox was very, very. It's in fact, Mpox is still very serious. Maybe we talk about that toward the end about this new clade that's circulating.
We can talk about why it's bad to have like vaccine or like deniers of prevention in charge of this while we have all of these things in a moment. We can be a little more specific in a minute.
Right. So Mpox came to New Orleans. This is mostly men who have sex with men, not exclusively, but mostly men who have sex with men. And we also had decadence coming. So we had an outbreak of Mpox here in New Orleans, and decadence was coming, and that was very high risk for a super spreader event. So the CDC came in and along with the state had a mass vaccination program. So what does that mean?
Good.
That means that they got on air. We talked about it on WHIV, on all the media. Everybody knew, all the print media, everybody knew that if you were at risk for Mpox, so it's mostly men who have sex with men, not exclusively, but mostly men who have sex with men, would go to bars and they would get a shot for a shot, let's say. You take a shot, you get a shot. And those were the things. That's an example of a mass vaccination program. Another example is flu vaccine. So you would have the state health department being at the church fair on Sunday, giving out vaccines. And so what we found out in December was that they were being told that that was going to happen. What happened today, timed, I think, I don't know for 100%, but timed suspiciously close.
A hell of a coincidence at the very least.
After RFK was sworn in, boom, they release the official declaration that state health departments cannot talk about vaccines. We are the first state that has done that. I could guarantee you that we will not be the last state. Okay, that's 100% because other states will start to do this. Other red states will start to do this. And this will be when you have somebody like, let's say you had somebody like me in charge of Department of Health and Human Services, the health commissioner, versus RFK. Let's say I am in the health
and again, you are a doctor of infectious diseases, so you know stuff.
So I know stuff.
He's a rich guy. He doesn't know anything.
Right. And so let's say that red states started to go rogue and say, we are going to start telling our health departments to not do this. What do? As the health commissioner, I can use leverage that the feds have on states. We can withhold monies. There's a lot of things that we could do to get the states to bend to our will, to my will. Okay. But I'm not the health commissioner. It's going to be RFK Jr. And do you think RFK Jr. is going to use the tools that is available to him to bend these states to the will of the public health? No. And in fact, he was placed in that position for that reason. He was placed in that position because he would not do that. And what could go wrong here? So let's talk.
Let's do station ID real quick. Pause station ID, WHIV LP, New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning Comrade, Jeff and Markalain Dery. We're talking about fun times and bright futures under the new chief of the HHS, Secretary of HHS, Bobby Kennedy Jr., and his his agenda of essentially denying ongoing epidemics that are on the rise right now. And just sort of like to set this up a little bit. I mean, we did see in 2020 what happens when a horribly managed public health crisis goes to hell. We have all these other ones looming. I guess sort of like talk about some of that and take it away.
All right. The lowest hanging fruit is bird flu. So let's talk about that. So first of all, we have basically influenza. This is the highest levels of influenzas we have seen in the longest time. In fact, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck in the hospital, I'm just treating them from flu. I don't care if the test is even positive or negative, just because at this point in the theory of epidemiology and the theory of public health, you don't even need a test once it reaches a certain tipping point. You know,
it's safer to assume that you do have it, unless
there's a higher likelihood the test may be falsely wrong, and you don't want to believe the test.
I remember
right?
that was a period that took place during COVID. Is that if you're showing symptoms of COVID,
Yes.
I mean, take the test, sure, fine, whatever. But like, if you're having the symptoms, we're just going to treat you like you have it.
100%. That's exactly right. So, so flu is very high. Hang on a second. Let me deal with Gilly Doo. Say hi, Gilly Doo. Hi, Gilly Doo. Oops, there you go. All right. He took me off screen, so let me get back to screen. Okay. So, so flu is very, very high. Well, let's put a pin in that because that's going to be very important in about 3 minutes. Okay. So just remember, we have high levels of flu. So what essentially causes a pandemic or an epidemic? Like we saw, pandemic is large, local, maybe on a continent. Epidemic is global. Okay. So what causes a pandemic? Okay. One, you have to have a novel virus. Let's talk about viruses. Okay. Because this is most likely happening in viruses. So you have to have a novel virus. In other words, brand new virus, right? Okay. Why is that important? It's important because that means the humans have never seen it. Okay, that's important. Okay, so one, it has to be a novel virus. Two, it has to be able to infect humans. Three, it needs to be able to cause disease, right? So it needs to be able to cause disease. Four, it needs to be transmitted from human to human. Okay, and then five, boom, you know, people have never seen it before. This is how an epidemic happens. Okay, so when you're looking at bird flu, this is a novel organism that we've never seen, that we know that infects human beings. It causes disease. What we haven't seen is that it's transmitted from human to human. So let me go all the way back and let's start. So the bird flu, just like humans get the flu, birds get the flu. They get a variant. In this case, they have a variant that's called H5N1. The H and the 5 reflect proteins, the spikes. Remember in COVID, it has all these spikes sticking off of it. Same thing as influenza. So the variant of it is H5 because that's the designation, and then N1. Okay, but that has also changed, and we'll get to that in a moment. So the reason why this is a problem is that this configuration of virus, in other words, the genetic configuration, it's genetically primed to infect and transmit. So what does that mean? So we transmit virus through saliva, sneezing, coughing, what have you, respiratory route, right? Whereas birds, their kind of respiratory route is really through their feathers and stuff. And so their version of flu is actually the gut. In fact, that's why some people actually get GI disturbances when they have the flu, because the flu is still tapping into some of those GI receptors. So the bird expels excrement, right, into areas where there's chickens. Let's say, and then the chicken.
Bird. I was gonna say on my car, but sure, like chickens.
Okay, well, in this case, it's chickens. Your car can't get bird flu, thank goodness, right? Unless you've got a very unique, unless you have like a Cybertruck. Who knows what that can get? Okay,
Let's not get into that one.
I love that's now become a political. Anyway, let's just.
The ugliest truck ever, by the way.
Anyway, so right, because it match anyway. So what happens when the chickens get it? It can infect chickens very, very rapidly, and then the chickens can transmit it very, very rapidly. So this is why eggs are expensive.
Yeah.
Was it the president? No. Was it the vice president? No. You know what it was? It was bird flu. Bird flu is the reason why. That's why eggs are super expensive, even though we have a new president. They're at all-time highs. The reason is because they're culling you can't treat the chicken, you have to kill it, and you have to cull the chicken. And we're talking millions and millions and millions of egg-producing chickens are being killed. But here's the kicker. We are seeing more virus transmit. We are seeing more animals, more than we've ever seen before, be infected with this bird flu. We've never seen bird flu infect so many, the wide variety of animals that this is very, very unique. That's very unique to bird flu. It's very unique to flu. It's just very unique that this bird flu is able to get into all these different animal populations and cause disease, okay? And oftentimes die. So how are we where we are right now? It eventually found its way into the dairy cattle.
All those raw milk drinkers, they're getting it.
We'll get to that in a second. So dairy cattle, we didn't know. That was a surprise to us that cows can be infected by bird flu. That was like, really? That's a thing?
But a cow's not a bird.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said many other animals are getting it, not just birds. So, but here's the crazy thing is the tissue that the virus is attracted to. It's called tropism. Tropism is viral tissue being a virus being attracted to a tissue. The tissue that it's attracted to in the cow is the mammary tissue. That's the milk producing. And so when cows are being milked, what's happening is that there's virus there and it's actually getting into the milk. The people who are milking the cows, they are also being sprayed. So you're getting the eye, so you're getting conjunctivitis. You're seeing some people getting infections where they have like small hemorrhages in their eyeballs. And what's happening is the cows are getting sick and the people there are getting sick. But here's the other thing that's very, very unique for us to think about is that cats are getting sick. Now, why are cats getting sick? Well, cats like milk, and milk is where the cows are. So they are nearby. They're obviously not sucking on the teat of the cow, but they are nearby. Maybe milk has been spilled. Maybe and the cats are dying, and they're dying on farms at rates of 50%. And unfortunately, and I know, Jeff, you and I are both cat lovers. The cats are also, and this is something that I have to strongly start considering. The reason is because there was a case in the state of Louisiana, and I'll talk about that in a second. But we may need to start keeping our cats indoors, because if a cat finds a dead bird,
we got a problem
that
here.
is infected with H5N1, there's a high likelihood that cat will bring that virus back to the home. We don't know if it can transmit to humans, but that cat can potentially get very, very, very sick. So now the reason why that's a thing for us is that in the state of Louisiana 2 months ago, that we were alerted to the fact that there was a case of H5N1 that was in the state of Louisiana. So bird flu, a man. But what was unique about this one was how acutely ill this person was. Now, we don't know anything about this person. We don't know where it was. All we know, it was Southwest Louisiana. If I said Southeast Louisiana a moment ago, I made a mistake. That was Southwest Louisiana. That's all we know. I don't even know if we know it was a male or female. I think we know the age, maybe somewhere in the 60s. I think that's the only thing that we know. But the other important epidemiological factor to consider here is that person also had no contact with dairy cattle at all. But that person had contact with birds and had birds in their backyard. So that means that H5N1 is here. And the thing that's really fascinating about this story, Jeffrey, is what did that virus do once it got into that human? That's where the story really, really gets scary, because the virus immediately started to evolve while it was still in the host. While the host was likely fighting that virus off and potentially dying, the virus was still evolving. And you can bet that the new CDC is not likely to do this. And under an RFK, we miss what I'm about to tell you right now. But typically, what the CDC is doing is they're at the bedside drawing blood all the time, obviously with
Keep
consent
track of
and
this
all
stuff.
that
Yeah.
stuff. But you are drawing blood to see how that virus, and they were able to document an evolutionary change, or maybe let me go this way, an evolutionary change of the virus. And as it was changing, it was developing genes to make it more more transmissible for human to
Human.
human.
Mm.
So, all right, do you remember I said we are at a high point of flu right now? The
Yep.
reason right now we are all super concerned, and this is why you're hearing a lot of stories about bird flu right now, is because we are seeing such high rates of influenza. Why is that an issue? Now, there's two types of ways that virus mutate. They either mutate in something that's called a drift, where they have these just gentle mutations. It's, it's enough that you need a new vaccine every year, but it's not enough that
The stuff that we're used to, essentially.
right. It's the but there's also something called a shift, an antigenic shift, where major pieces of the virus somehow are kind of put together. And one way that you can get antigenic shift is when you have two viruses, let's say a human flu virus, and then you have a bird flu virus, and they infect the same cell. Okay, so now you have two viruses in the same cell. Hubba hubba, they end up having viral sex, which is basically exchanging genetic material, which in the end is what sex is anyway. But they end up having viral sex. They exchange genetic
I thought
material.
that was just on the internet. Sorry.
I don't know what you're watching on the internet.
Anyway, no. But I'm sorry. I'm derailing. But
yeah.
All right.
Yeah. You are a 12-year-old at heart. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's why we are such good friends. Okay. So the reason that that's a problem is what happens if the bird flu swaps genetic material and it picks up the human to human transmission factor from human flu that we know is so highly transmissible.
Then we have a problem. Then we have a huge problem.
Now we have a problem
that we are not, as a society, prepared to contend with, because we have this complete and utter science denier who is taking over essentially all of American medical policy, at least from the governmental perspective.
So that was the next thing I was going to say.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
No. That's right. No. Last week I was doing all your segues, so I appreciate that you're doing all mine. No. I just let it up perfectly well, because you totally caught what I was putting out there, which is
a royal flush of just like horrible things happening all at once.
Right. Yeah. So now what happens? So now you have the CDC that's been more or less muted. You have the NIH that's more or less muted. We've withdrawn from the WHO. These are weak as they may have been. Mm-hmm. In fact, terrible as they may have been.
And they're in a lot of ways, right? Yeah.
They were still the things that we had in place so that we could watch. Like you had somebody who was at the bedside. Maybe they weren't at the bedside. Maybe somebody else was at the bedside, but they were sending it, whatever. It doesn't matter. But the CDC was involved with this case in Southwest Louisiana because we had to study what the virus was doing, because the CDC has the tools to do that. I don't. Tulane Hospital doesn't, right? Certainly the hospital they were in doesn't. Nobody has those tools to study it. You know who does? CDC. You know who does? NIH. And you know what they can't do anymore is study these sorts of things. You know what happens when we're not ready? One, you already have health agencies that don't talk to you. And two, we don't know the severity of the illness, which then leads to, this is why this is so important. Having these conversations. Certainly, Doc Griggs and I are going to be starting Noise Filter again. I think we talked about that last week.
Yeah, Noise Filter's coming back, baby.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's so that we have these conversations because we're not for as long as we can. And I sound crazy saying that. It sounds crazy as it leaves my lips, man. But right now, I mean, right now what's happening in New York in the criminal district court there, and the pure corruption. I mean, they let Eric Adams go, right? Without prejudice, with
Yeah,
basically or with prejudice, I don't know which one, which basically means that they can open the case at any one time
that's without.
if
Yeah,
it's without prejudice. So basically, that means that if only you assist with our immigration, our horrific and fascistic immigration policies. And he's
yeah,
like, okay,
yeah.
like
I'll do
open
whatever. Just keep me
open
out of jail.
open corruption, open corruption. So we have to assume that level of open corruption is going to be something that we're going to see moving forward.
Yeah. You listen to be HIVLP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning Comrade, Jeff and Markalain Dery, talking about really the next couple of years and the sort of possible perfect storm, I suppose, of the rise of things like bird flu and also some of these other like all-time high flu numbers, and also this complete kind of like power outage of the
Greatest agencies
itself.
in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
Some of the most
The
respected
medical infrastructure of
agencies.
this country and of a lot of the West, even. And this is one of those things that, when we talk about this with Robert, we were talking about it with this last week, and he sort of, we keep seeing these parts of the sort of like American state and the American empire just start to fall, like, these really kind of core components of, I mean, what people sort of take for granted as far as things that keep you healthy. I mean, when I was a kid, and things weren't perfect then, but like you would get your vaccinations to go to school, nobody thought really twice about it. And now this is such a like wildly controversial subject, and now it's become something that is not only like highly politicized, but like genuinely dangerous for like just the people, especially a country that has some of the worst health outcomes in OECD nations, where health coverage is very difficult to get unless you have a job that provides it. It's extremely expensive, and I mean, honestly, when you have people like Luigi Mangione going and killing healthcare executives, whether you think it's right or wrong, like we're in a state where people feel like that is a reasonable thing to do because of the state of our healthcare
The
system. Yeah,
desperation. The
and it's
desperation.
just like we're having, we have probably one of the worst healthcare systems at any point in my life. I mean, I'll be very honest. I haven't, ever since I lost my job in September, I haven't had health insurance, and so it's like one of those sorts of situations where, like, what are you going to do when you leave yourself open as a society to these things? Like, it's bad.
Well, let me also kind of paint some other kind of bleak kind of pictures for you. And also never bring an infectious disease doctor to a party. We are Debbie Downers. No, I'm joking. We're not at all.
Well,
And I hate saying Debbie
unless you're
Downer.
playing music, I
We're
mean,
David Downers. That's
yeah,
what we
oh, man, you can bring your double bass. You can have some fun.
are. So let's talk about vaccines.
Yeah,
Um, the man clearly has stated, even though he, all this double speak that they do, it's just like, just tell the truth, dude. Like, just tell the truth.
can't do
But,
that.
but, anyway, so he's vehemently against vaccines. We've known about this. He has an organization that essentially shills for anti-vaccinations, especially for children.
Mhm.
So now let's think about a society that doesn't have vaccinated children.
Mhm.
Think about, first of all, you have kids now that are getting diseases that we haven't seen, that doctors just don't see. I
Mhm.
mean, I've seen a lot of these these childhood diseases that can be prevented by vaccines here in the US. I've seen them around the world. And I've often said one of the greatest tragedies in the world is watching a child die. One, watching a child die. Two, is watching a child die of a vaccine preventable disease. We are going to start to see vaccine preventable diseases emerge. So what is that? We're going to start seeing Haemophilus B, which is a deadly disease. That's Haemophilus B is a bacteria. We are going to see undoubtedly measles, mumps, rubella. Obviously, those are things. We are going to start seeing polio. We're going to, we are going to see pertussis outbreaks. We are going to see possibly, I don't know if children get diphtheria, but certainly diphtheria. Certainly, if a child steps on a nail and is not tetanus vaccinated, they could potentially lose that limb. Right. I mean, these are the things that and don't even start on the cancer preventing like HPV. We have a vaccine that can prevent cervical cancer. Like it almost is like 100%. In fact, they're having to change the guidelines from having to get. Ask women over the age of like 40 or 45 have to go to the GYN every year and and get for people who have had the full series of vaccines who've never had an abnormal pap smear. They don't have to do that because the likelihood of you getting cervical cancer is like almost nil. Okay. And so like we are creating, I'm going to put this back into, I'm going to ask you a question here at the end of the statement. We are creating a society that's going to be more vulnerable to being sick.
Yeah.
And suffering from significant morbidity. Okay. Let me ask you this. You and I are smart guys. We can see this. They're supposedly very smart people. They can see it too. Why, I ask you, are they doing this?
I mean, no good reason for sure, but like the sort of one thought about it is, I mean, honestly,
Why do they want a sick population?
because
Why do they want a population that's a weak population?
A sick population is a vulnerable population, is a population that's very easily dominated by the ruling class. Straight up. I mean, like if you have a sick working class, you're going to that will be a much more difficult.
Why do you want what about a working class that doesn't have access to birth control or abortions?
Then that means they have a lot more things to worry about when it comes to taking care of their children and taking care of all of these things. It's extremely expensive to have children. So it's really a way to sort of like another way to entrench poverty. I mean, these things don't seem particularly related, but they absolutely are.
100% related. 100%.
Sure, but what I'm about to say is that like student loans.
Sorry.
Trump recently.
No, it's 100% related. You're
like,
saddling people with like either you're saddling them with medical debt, not medical debt like your bills to pay, but medical debt, health debt, or you're saddling them with child debt, or in this case, financial school debt. 100%.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like they don't seem like they would be related on the surface, but they absolutely are. And this is something that is kind of coming across the board. I mean, the $8 eggs serves a double purpose, I suppose, because that costs more to feed your family.
100%. 100%. So that's where we're at. I mean, and unfortunately, we're not going to see any improvement. And you said, maybe, we're only here for a couple years or whatever. And I say, excuse me, I'm like, dream with me, Jeff. That's only going to be a couple years. Dream with me.
I'd say that long-lasting damage can be done for generations.
No. But you were saying hopefully this. I think you were implying the Trump administration was only going to last for a couple years, and
its impact would be felt much longer, regardless 100%. Of whether it ends.
I don't think it's going to end, but yes, he will be remembered as probably one of the most impactful, not necessarily in a good way, but as one of the most impactful presidents, because he literally got in there and slashed and burned. And now what do you think governors and what do you think governors are going to do in red states? They are going to, and let me ask you this, play this game with me. What if Barack Hussein Obama got into the government and then started to do this, who won by a mandate, a massive mandate, right? No, first of all, Democrats never fight like this. They
get mad now. They're doing the thing where like,
We
oh, we have
will
no
win.
yeah, they're doing that hilarious thing. And then you also have at the same time Hakeem Jeffries saying, we're not gonna what leverage do we have to negotiate anything with the Republicans? We just need to get steamrolled over and over again because they won the House, the Senate, and the presidency by historically, again, I say this over and over again on the show, by extremely thin margins. They have like you said, Schumer, we will win. But then also, I mean, I was just talking about this with someone else. Every single time you see a fiscal cliff or a debt ceiling or a government shutdown or whatever, the Republicans will do anything there is at all to get their pound of flesh out of those negotiations that they have, that they do create leverage in. And the Democrats are like, well, I guess we can't do it. And I mean, again, when you look at these sorts of situations, you also remember when the Democrats are in charge. Oh, we want to get, we raise the minimum wage and put this in the debt reconciliation bill or whatever. Oops. Oh, man, the parliamentarian, they just really screwing us over. I can't believe it. But then you have the Republicans coming in and they do anything they want. They just like slap it into overdrive and start steamrolling everything. And
And
you wonder why people hate Democrats. You
right.
wonder why people hate Democrats. I mean, like, even at the very least, all this stuff that I think that the Republicans are doing is bad. I don't agree with any of it. But I at least can respect the fact that they're governing with something of an iron fist. They're at least implementing their will and not just rolling over and giving up at the first sight of any kind of resistance. Barack Obama himself. I mean, if you remember when it came to the public option, when it came to the Healthcare Act, they gave up before they even started because Rahm Emanuel told them to.
No, 100%. And, and how easy was this? One, the fact that we still have a filibuster. I mean, obviously, the fact that we still have a filibuster is a joke. And then also even when you have the majorities, you're going to always have a Kristen Sinema or a
The rotating villain of the Democrats. You have a
today,
Fetterman now. You have
now
a
it's a
whatever.
Fetterman. Right. It's and so we're never like I have now come to realize over the course of the last couple of years, we're never going to live in this sort of society that focuses on racial, environmental, social issues as we would want them to, right? Social, environmental, economic, and racial issues. That's just nothing that we're going to see. And now I fear that the Republicans now are going to take the lead. Basically, Trump is showing he's giving a permission structure for states to basically take the lead, and when they see that they're not going to be punished, they may actually be rewarded for this. Then we are going to see. I think we are going to see, at least from a healthcare perspective. I mean, the regulations are gone. I mean, remember how in Texas they were taking in, I think in Florida, people were, if you worked outdoors, you were allowed to get like a 15-minute water break.
Yeah,
Like every, yeah, they took that away. Like the cruelty is the point. Obviously, we've talked about that a number of times, but what we're going to see here, in terms of children, we are going to see significantly children suffer, and we're going to see adults suffer. We're going to see adults suffer from not getting vaccines. I mean, I've told you a number of times that the cases during the Delta outbreak that happened during Ida, which was in August 29th. Katrina, what was that, like 2021? We were having the largest Delta COVID outbreak. It was the most pathogenic. In other words, it had the highest mortality associated with it. And we saw people, as we were about to intubate them, put them on a breathing machine, we're always like, "Hey, doc, I'll take the vaccine now." I'm like, "Doesn't work like that, dude." Like, it doesn't work. And do you know why we had so many cases of Delta in the hospital? Was not because of the New Orleans population. It was people from all over the rest of the state who didn't get vaccinated, all because they filled up all the hospitals all along the way. And we ended up with the folks from all over the state that couldn't get a bed anywhere else. And because our population had vaccination rates of 85% plus. So that's a very, very high vaccination rate. I'm sure probably in Jefferson Parish it was a little bit lower, but still we had very, very high vaccination rates. So we are going to see less influenza vaccination rates with the state of Louisiana not being able to talk about it. I also would not be surprised if we also are going to start to see that they start telling people not to promote PrEP. What's PrEP? PrEP is pre-exposure prophylaxis. This is an incredibly effective, very, very helpful tool that prevents HIV infection. So if you're HIV negative, you take a medicine. This will prevent HIV. This will prevent you from getting an HIV infection. It's 99% effective when taken as recommended, which is basically every day. Not everybody does that, but still, it's still very, very highly effective. I would not. We have the state promotes PrEP programs all up and down the state. I bet you gone. I bet you that's going to be gone. And then there are things that we do after people have sex that also prevents a bacterial infection. I wouldn't be surprised if, that's higher up the tree, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe indications get taken away for stuff like that, and that's kind of how this game is going to be played. We're not going to feel anything, for a year or 2 years or 3 years. But like you said, these are going to be generational changes. And like we said before, this is why I don't think it's going to be in a positive way, but we are going to see that Trump will be remembered as an incredibly impactful president because of just the sheer slash and burn approach that he's taking.
Yeah. You listen to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. Good morning, comrade. Markalain Dery and Jeff here on the show. And I we keep bringing this point up as well on the program, like as far as, off ramps for this. Is there a way to actually turn this whole thing around? I mean, like at this point, it does to a certain, and I don't want to be completely gloom and doom about it. I mean, that seems to be not the most productive way to go about it, but you have to be real about the threats and the dangers that are here. I also don't want to be too sort of like starry-eyed about what could potentially happen in a future if there is one. Like, is this like what? How we're in a freaking hole right now? We're in a deep hole, and there's it's filling with water, and we're not going anywhere for at least a while. What is the way out of this? Like what is the alternatives to this? Is there like non-governmental ways that this can be taken care of?
No. So while we need to use media, like, and this is like mutual aid type stuff.
Yeah.
Like we need to go super
Band-aid in a bullet wound, but at least it's a Band-Aid, right?
We need to do serious mutual aid. Like now they have taken away the most effective mechanisms of communication, either between Twitter. Blue Sky is great, but it's not as influential. It's not as huge as Twitter was, right? That's been taken. All mechanisms of communication will eventually be taken away. Certainly concerned about what's happening at NPR, certainly concerned about what's happening at PBS. We are already seeing a radio station in San Francisco that is going to probably die by 1,000 legal cuts because of this radio station criticized ICE, but it wasn't that they were necessarily criticizing the immigration policies of the administration. What they were also doing was they were also publicizing ICE sightings in San Francisco.
Oh, was this public radio, community radio?
I don't know if it was community or if it was commercial radio. I have to assume it was probably public radio, but I don't know because I don't think at all a commercial radio station, which is basically owned by a conglomerate, by a robber baron, is not going to tolerate this. So it'd have to be a community or public radio. So right now, while we have the opportunity, we have to talk to one another. We have to reach out to our spheres, the people so we have to have trusted networks. We have to have people like me, like if you want information about infectious diseases, about pandemics, whatever, you'll find Dr. Dery, Doc Griggs, Noise Filter. You'll be able to hear what we have to say. And right now that is going to be, and it's going to be again, trusted networks. It's going to be pastors who are going to try to get this information. But what they are doing is, and that's not a very good solution, by the way, it's the only solution available to us, like WHIV, the radio station. That is going to be one of the areas. It's going to be Pacifica Network. Pacifica has been coming to me saying, yo, like chop, like you need to get noise filter back and running again so that we can start publicizing, or we can start educating our listenership. But the listenership of Pacifica is nothing. It's a penny in the billionaire sofa. You know, it's nothing.
Drop in the ocean.
It is the only thing that we have, and keeping ourselves safe and keeping each other safe. So we really have to take a mutual aid approach to how these things work moving forward.
Yeah, and like any kind of further solutions, like you're just sort of like you're in the like, you know, getting patched up by the, like, and sorry about that. You're getting patched up by like the, inexperienced medic that's doing whatever it is. You can't look to official channels. And in the meantime, there has to be some kind of forward push, some kind of political movement. And I would just, look forward to our conversation with Ashik from Democratic Socialists of America, which is coming out, I believe, next week, for ways that, like, we can have an actual counter to this that is not this completely, flaccid, completely rollover, completely. I mean, again, I keep bringing up Weimar Germany on this show too. Robert does as well. Like, this complete capitulation to the demons at the gates, and I don't want to be too like, I don't want to be too like, rose-colored glasses about the way that the society currently is, but the liberalism, the people, the people that preach stability for your entire life and mine have absolutely failed to provide that stability and defend off the threat that they themselves identified. And then you see, it had a report that came out in Axios a few days ago where, the Democratic leadership are upset and angry at organizations and groups like Move On for calling them and telling them to do something, to use the little leverage that they have. It is
that
so
right
ridiculous.
there. Not like I needed to be shown anything, but that right there was like, all right, that's it. Third party, like you guys are not. You're not the right people at this moment. You're not meeting the moment, or maybe you are, and you are truly the Washington Generals. You are truly just being paid to be the other side.
Born losers.
You are paid losers, and they are. When you take, what was powerful about Bernie, like many things, but the fact that he was not corporate funded. He was funded at $27 a clip, and that's what funded him. That's what funds AOC. That's what funds the Justice Democrats, right? And they are very powerful. Even Matt Gaetz did not take corporate funds. This is why he was able to act the fool. I mean, ultimately, he got run out of DC.
Thank
but
God for that.
Yeah, thank goodness for that. But let him go back to and be the governor of Florida and raise all sorts of hell over there. But the point that I'm making is that when you are taking corporate donations, when you're taking, when you're basically being bribed, let's just call it what it is. Let's stop being nice. When you're being bribed by corporations, when you're being bribed by rich donors, when you're just being bribed, right? When you're being bribed, you are going to do the will of the grandma who gave you $5, out of New Orleans, Louisiana, or the person who gave you $100 million and told you settle the West Bank, or like or free the West Bank, or I'm trying to think of the word.
Take over Gaza and like essentially take over as well. I mean,
and so I'm talking about what's her name? Adelson, right? Adelson. So and here's another thing. Let's like even go further out. In these last few minutes, Jeff. Like look what's happening globally. Like he's now talking about with a monster, a genocidal monster. And it, like, listen, and as an American Jew, this puts American Jews in very, very difficult positions.
You're talking about Netanyahu.
I'm talking about Netanyahu. Like, I've always disliked Netanyahu for the 18 or 20 years or however long he's been on the scene. He's always been loathsome. When he was first out there, I'm like, oh, this impressive guy, Harvard English, blah, blah. But obviously he's become loathsome for the last 20 years or whatever. He's a horrible person. Certainly what he's done in the last couple of years last year has been horrific, right? And now you have Trump, who's just standing right there next to him saying, yeah, we're just going to take over it.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to take over Gaza. Like, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who, like, that's madness. Like, people like, I don't like Reagan. Like, he was a horrible president. I don't like the Bushes. They were horrible presidents. I was alive when Nixon was around. I was not paying attention to politics, but I was paying attention to politics with Carter. I will say that.
Mm-hmm.
Ford, I barely started to pay attention, but Carter, I paid attention to, and I remember having an affinity toward Carter. But the point that I'm making is that they're not going to, like, they're going to expand the U.S. empire, but in the ways that have been approved by the powers that be, right? You do it a little by little. You use the CIA. You do some soft power. You kill, and I do not approve any of these, right? You know, you go into Latin America. You know, oh, there's a socialist. There's
we killed off the soft power though. We killed off USAID. We killed off the benefits of being a part of the empire.
We don't need soft power anymore, dude. That's it. You got muscle. Like, Greenland is going to be red, white, and blue land. Did you see that? like some Yahoo actually wrote a bill that said we're authorizing Trump the ability to buy.
Hey, show some respect, Congressman Yahoo. Okay,
Congressman Yahoo, to buy Greenland and call it red, white, and blue land. No, like what we're seeing is we are seeing, like, you know what? This country wasn't working anyway. It wasn't. It was so unfair. It treated people horribly. It for the wealthy, it was great for them. They had it great. They got richer just by putting more money in the game, by buying politicians. They were cheap. $270 million is cheap when you can go buy Twitter and be robbed by it, you know, and still be considered the richest man in the world. $270 million. It's embarrassing how, and state politicians are even worse. They're like for thousands of dollars, right? So
you have no self-respect. Can't you at least get bought off for like real money? Like,
right? So what do we do? How do you take, we are, as American, dude, I guarantee you in 50 years, you're going to walk through some genocide museum and you're going to see there's going to be a big thing with Israel and Gaza and American complacency, or being complicit.
The problem is we're all going to have to speak Mandarin. I don't want to learn it. Come on, it's a hard language.
Dude. Yes, I can't wait to learn Mandarin or Arabic or whatever. You know, my good friend Bob Hitt, who actually said that you reached Sam gave him a shout out yesterday, and he said that you alerted him to it. You know, Bob went to my home country before I knew him, and Bob went to Morocco to teach English, learned Arabic, married a beautiful Moroccan woman and he speaks Arabic regularly, and I'm like, I'm from Morocco. I can barely speak 3 words of Arabic. Okay. Like, how do you do it in like 3 years? I am 56 and should know Arabic, and I don't, damn it.
I remember the only Arabic I ever learned, and this, we got to go, but I did go to, remember when our friend Jenny did the Islam 101 classes?
Such a beautiful person.
Her husband came in and he would teach Arabic as well, and that was pretty cool. I love that. Man. Love Jenny. Love the
Jenny,
family.
love you. Goodness gracious.
On the show.
Dude, I have tried. Anyway, yes. Jenny's always welcome to have a show. She had a great show. And her husband, they had a show called Islam in the Crescent City.
Islam in the Crescent City. That was the first ever show I ever did at WHIV. I did it with her. She invited me to come on. And
Islam in the Crescent City. Yeah. That was the only religious show on WHIV because I'm an atheist. That was the only religious show on WHIV. And also, I loved that she prayed on the show. She read from the Quran on the show. And all she was doing was, hey, I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I stay at home. I make groceries.
She's also a badass too, by the way.
Well, you know, then she became like this badass activist. But the point that she was making was, let me read from the book that we read from, and look at my children and how beautiful they are.
Yeah.
I love my children like you do. I go to my temple of worship like you do. You know, like, and we were normalized. I can't even believe I'm even saying that, but we were exposing Islam
It's
in
America.
Crescent City. Yeah.
All right, we got to go. But thank you again, Markalain Dery. Thanks for coming on. Noise Filter coming back. Tell the people bye-bye.
Peace out, baby.
Bye-bye.